Is there a part of you that thought maybe I don't want to share that with the world?
I just think there was no other option for me. I had to write it. I had to write it for me. I had to like get it out. I think you'd like feel sick if you like kept all of that in. But
Olivia Rodrigo's music embodies the tyranny that is girlhood, and that is precisely why it hits so hard. Hi, I'm Kate. I make music and I talk about things that I love. And lately, I've had Guts on repeat, much like I had Sour on previously. Though I gotta say, and you know, it's hard to pick between children, but I do feel like I like Guts a bit more. I love a beautiful ballad, but those moments where I feel like Olivia breaks out of that and shows some of her rockier influences are some of my favorites. But anyway, literally, I've just been listening to this album on repeat and I've been racking my brain as to why it feels so good. Like it's been a while since I've resonated with a relatively like new artist, but it's clear to me that Olivia has a really strong knack for articulating the experience of girlhood that kind of just happens to women, like whether or not you're conscious of it happening, it will happen. And her songs just really scratch that wound in a cathartic way. Okay, who am I if not exploited? So, one of the most terrifying, unfortunately, fairly universal experience from transitioning from girlhood to early adulthood is the unveiling of objectification. Again, this is just something that happens to you. I think a lot of us first become aware of this weird dynamic through things like catcalling. The way people relate to you and their expectations towards you start to change in accordance with your appearance. And that is always a challenging thing to reckon with. And I cannot imagine what this experience would be like growing up in the public eye, especially as a Disney star, and especially some of the success of driver's license being attributed to the personal detailings of Olivia's love life. She never made it about that beyond, you know, writing her song. And we should want artists to be honest and vulnerable and feel like they can use music and art as a safe space to talk about what they're genuinely experiencing. But quickly, because of our consumption, started to supersede that in some ways. The drama became the draw into the song at times. And I think with anyone who gets that level of attention or fame or notoriety is eventually poised to become an object in some way or a character in a story that we project our own feelings and thoughts onto. As Olivia says, all of the drama that surrounded driver's license was baptism by fire. That's a great phrase. Cleaving her personal identity and her celebrity persona became a priority she worked through in therapy. I'm the happiest when I can separate the two. So there's that constant theme that's weaved throughout her music of delineating what's truly for her and accepting that there are just things that people will take. And unfortunately, I think that is such a universal experience. Even if you're not famous, you very quickly realize that people will project expectations on you based on your body, based on how you choose to present or not present yourself. And it's very disturbing, you know, realizing that people can take things from you without your consent for the sake of their own pleasure. I feel like growing up, I didn't always realize this. And then as I came into adulthood, I started to understand some of the underlying intentions of the people around me weren't as pure as I thought. One of my earliest experiences being like 12 and just walking around town and having a car with two young men pull up and asking me if I wanted to party with them. And being very confused. And now, like, I understand what that meant. but it's very bizarre when the outward portrayal of yourself starts acting as an invitation to others when you have never extended that. And I love that Olivia's music so earnestly holds the vulnerability for herself and shares her true feelings, even though she has to go through what I can't imagine, just an overwhelming force of opinions pressed upon her. And especially, I think as any woman in the music industry, eyes are on you in a different way than male artists. And I'm just constantly impressed by her ability to hold boundaries for herself and continue doing the work of making her art and staying vulnerable despite being turned into a symbol at times. When I'm talking about this, it feels hyper specific, but I know for a fact that, every girl or woman in my life has some form of formative experience, like I've described, of realizing that people will consume you in some shape, way, or form, or assume that you are there for their utility in some way, without you ever agreeing to it. So when music can articulate that, it's something else, baby. And on that point, there's no right way to be a woman, right? There's just so many different definitions of femininity and like what that entails and what it means to find yourself in a sea of constant and ever-changing expectations. Body types are trends now, which is terrifying. I feel lucky that there was some time in my childhood and adolescence where I didn't have access to social media because it wasn't there yet. But I cannot imagine navigating that with less of a prefrontal cortex. I love that so many of her songs don't pretend to have it figured all out. Like there's room for error. And it's celebrated and incredible, like Ballad of a Homeschool Girl, Bad Idea, right? I love that. I love it so much. Love is Embarrassing. There's just Making the Bed. There's just so many moments where it's clear that Olivia builds a space where you can hold the parts of yourself that you're really proud of, but also like the things you're still working on and trying to figure out who are you and what does that mean and how do you relate to people? As Olivia said in an older interview, I just turned 18. I truly don't really know who I totally am yet. I don't know the way I like to dress. I don't know the way I like to act around certain people. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what people are my true friends. I'm just going to keep on making music and I'm probably going to be really confused along the way. And I think that's the beauty of it. I'm not trying to pretend like I have everything figured out because I don't. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that refreshing? I think I've seen a lot of online discourse about there isn't really space to be, this is kind of related, but there isn't a lot of space to be like a tween or like anyone who's like in more of like an awkward phase. But I think that can also extend into early adulthood. You know, there's just so much pressure because of our obsession with capturing ourselves to convey a very put together image that's got it all figured out. And Olivia's just so remarkably self-aware that she's able to be like, you know what, I don't. And I think that's so liberating and healthy, especially for young people to hear. So it's nice. And it's nice to hear like the difficult feelings called out and like jealousy, or Lacy. It's normal to be confused. It's normal to not know. And if someone as fabulous as Olivia Rodrigo doesn't have it figured out, it's most definitely okay that we don't have it all figured out. Not to create like a weird separation, but it's just nice to see someone be so honest. This is more in interviews, but I also feel like in watching the way that Olivia carries herself, she's always talking about how she sets boundaries from herself in terms of like, there were some early interviews where she was like, oh, I check my Spotify page every day. And then later interviews, she's like, I don't check my Spotify numbers at all. And I try and block it all out. And like sit at my piano and work. And, she talks about social media in that way as well. And she says, if I'm being completely honest, I really have not been on TikTok a lot since the song came out. It's been such a whirlwind. If I went on TikTok, I would literally be on there for 5 hours and I get nothing done. So I can't. Yeah. She's so real about that. And I think it's very important for people, but especially girls, to set limits around what we're consuming, or at least be conscious of what we're consuming and the intentions behind it. And I feel like so much of her music talks about these weird negotiations and feelings that we introduce when we allow ourselves to consume too much content without like a positive intention behind it. And she's not perfect, right? Like, this is something she needs to upkeep regularly and be conscious of. And I think it's really amazing that she talks about that aspect in interviews. The traps of timeline. So I think Teenage Dream is the best song for this, but I think as a lady, you are told and you become very aware very quickly that you, miss, do have a biological clock, and that changes things. And that means you can only do whatever when you're X age. And there's just like a different expectation when it comes to aging, when it comes to accomplishing things within a highly condensed timeline. And I think a lot of that pressure is universal to the girlhood experience. I asked her about something she said a few times in 2021, that young women in pop music had an expiration date placed on them at age 30. I was under the impression, she said, that the younger you are, the more successful you'll be in the music industry. She'd always known that the paradigm was unfair. Now she rejects altogether the idea that value is externally defined. I think I believed these false ideas for a little while. The most painful moment of my life turned into my most successful. For a minute, she imagined the more pain she was in, the more people would like her, the more money she would make. Now she thinks you write good albums when you're growing a lot. And that's a process that goes on all your life. Anyway, she doesn't want to be a pop star forever necessarily. What she cares about is that she can keep writing songs, whether for herself or other people. I think that quote pretty much sums everything up, but giving your space, giving yourself room to breathe in early adulthood, and remember, no one's dying, especially as a woman, is very challenging. And I'm so glad that she's chosen to express a lot of these themes in her music.
I really love the song All American. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever written, and I really love the lyrics of it, and I think it expresses something that I've been trying to express since I was like 15 years old, this sort of repressed, anger and feeling of, confusion, or trying to be like put into a box as a girl. And so, yeah.
Ooh, and quite possibly my favorite theme that comes up a lot in Rodrigo's music is what I think is a very common experience for women, is like repression of certain emotions for the greater good. All American Bitch is incredible. It's such a good song. This might be my favorite from Guts, but it's very hard because there's so many on that album that I love. But just this constant dichotomy, like you have to play. Like, I think for both women and men, and the theys and the thems, and like there is an expectation with how you identify to what emotions you are allowed to express. And anger, especially in women, is something that's not seen as acceptable. It's not okay to, have a moment. As Olivia says, I want it to be like messy. I agree. This is not every artist's experience, and I don't think it has to be at all. But when I was kind of like figuring out my live show more and figuring out my own music, I've always tried really hard to like, I don't want to be pretty, you know, like I feel like that is such an expectation. That is what the feminine musician is. And maybe I could be that, but I don't want to be just that. And I've also been inspired by people like Lady Gaga, who like completely reject it. And like, even if like I'm disgusting on stage, like at least I made you feel something. And so I love feral women. I love them acting out, because we are human and we act out and we experience emotion. And like, I think what a lot of people forget is that being emotional, having emotion is a cognitive process. You know, you're always told like, don't be too emotional, but actually letting yourself feel something, that's how you work through things. So telling someone not to be emotional is not gonna solve anything. When Rodrigo released Sour, she said she was proud it contained the kind of messy emotions that young women aren't meant to exhibit, a mission statement that her apparently uninhibited rise bore out. It seemed as though she had beaten the game, but her second album, Guts, starts with All American Bitch, a satirical diatribe against the expectations and double standards she still feels bound by. Yes, nuance. Imagine women being multifaceted. I love it. Another thing I think is really fascinating is I'll hear people all the time say things like, oh my gosh, I'm X age and I still love Olivia Rodrigo's music. And like, wow, isn't that crazy? I'm going to be around so many teenagers when I go to her concert. And I always thought that was weird. I'm a little older than Miss Rodrigo, and I just I don't understand why people say that, but I do get a sense that in general women are taught to take on responsibility and like not dwell on to hobbies or things maybe they enjoyed in their youth outside of like a fleeting moment of reminiscing. But like, if this exploration has taught me anything, you know, I already really loved Olivia's music, but as a person, like I'm really impressed with the way that she carries herself, and seems just like a very self-aware person. Rodrigo says, let the music speak for itself. I think people can sense that I'm not trying to be somebody that I'm not. I did grow up on Disney Channel. I'm sort of this goody two-shoes, and I think shying away from that would do my art an injustice. I think it's incredible that she is crafting this very unique space for herself in exactly the way that feels authentic to her. I think that's a lot easier said than done. And I'm really proud of her for not succumbing to the pressure to make her music more vague, because of all of the crazy speculation and the very direct and frankly annoying interview questions prodding about who the music is about or who it isn't about, because at the end of the day it doesn't matter.
I think explanation is never good for art. Why would I like pigeonhole a song into being about this one thing in my life when everyone has their own interpretation?
The point of music, the point of art is for it to transcend the author's original experience. And I think Olivia does a great job at that. And for that, job well done. She's done everything she needs to do. And she's also like she's not afraid. The day that Roe v. Wade was overturned, she was on stage calling out the Supreme Court justices by name and saying like, I don't like you. And that's incredible and takes guts. But yeah, it's like the most healthy, like realistic depiction of girlhood that I feel like is compassionate and understanding of what it's really like. That is so universal yet personal at the same time. It's incredible. And just this quote, I think growing up, I always had this idea that more is better, like more friends, more people in your life, going out, more experiences. But I think keeping your circle small is so important, and just talking to people who you really love and trust has so much value. I don't think that there's any need to spread yourself too thin. I thought that by doing that, I would make myself more popular and more attractive, but I don't think that's true at all. I think you have to look inward and start there and really surround yourself with things that you want to be surrounded with, because that just affects you as a person so much. Olivia Rodrigo is doing herself and inspiring a generation of ladies and women and people to do that for themselves as well. The only way to come to terms with the never-ending expectations of that, unfortunately, very challenging and nuanced experience of coming into the world as a girl or as a woman is to figure out where your place is and honor that internally, regardless of what the outside world, myself included, has to say about it. And that is the magic of Miss Olivia. That is why we love her. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. What are your favorite Rodrigo songs? I think off of Sour, my favorite was Brutal and Jealousy. And then off of Guts, I love All American Bitch and Lacy. I love Lacy. I love Love is Embarrassing. I love Ballad of a Homeschool Girl. I love Making the Bed. I like, it's so hard to choose. I love Get 'Em Back. Such a bop. So many good songs. So hard. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are yours? And yeah, that's all I got. I kind of sound like a frog. There's something going around New York. I think I have an infection. So I've been staying home. But yes, get your flu shots, get your COVID shots. Be safe. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Bye.